culture has given us just so much of, you know, marriage in the bad light when it comes to adultery and cheating. Hello everybody.
Hello, welcome. If you're new, welcome for the first time. And if you're not new, welcome back.
Yes.
So today we're gonna chat about something. We have somewhat of a split opinion.
Not even a split opinion, but we feel like, hey, there are two different spectrums of marriage and cultural relationships.
It's not a right and wrong, but I think we'll talk about it. So we're gonna be talking about pretty much our experience and even just what we've observed navigating culture as a Christian married couple, from the two different perspectives of what culture portrays marriage to be. So Dex's perspective is state your claim.
So my stance is that, hey, culture is counter marriage, and that basically a lot of people
See it define that.
Yeah, people are kind of against the stance of going forth to get married. So that's my stance.
Yeah, which I can understand that, and we can elaborate. But I'm going to be talking kind of from the perspective of marriage being idolized and being like people being forced to be married, or feeling the pressures of having to get married quickly or sooner than they may desire, or stuff like that. Just the pressures of being married for unmarried people. So yeah, and how what we've seen, kind of the effects of both sides of that, and then how we kind of navigate it because we are married. Obviously we weren't always married. So yeah, just some thoughts and maybe a little wisdom to help us all kind of figure it out, because people can't be pleased. It's tough.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we can start with my stance.
Yeah.
So I think one day I was just chilling and sitting there thinking about how culture these days give us so much from social media and just different outlets, just showing the idolization of self, which I don't think is wrong when you're really just trying to grow and figure out who you are. But I think a lot of times when you're just so focused on yourself, you start to eliminate the thoughts of understanding of, well, hey, God calls us to be selfless, and to serve other people. And sometimes in doing that, he calls you to marriage. And when he calls you to marriage, being able to understand like, hey, that is a gift from God. And it's not a bad thing. But I think nowadays culture has given us just so much of, marriage in the bad light, when it comes to adultery and cheating, and even when relationships before you get married, just how you're treated.
Drama.
Yeah, and how people don't respect relationships in marriage. So I just think we've been able to experience the healthy parts of it, being married now, but we can both attest to being in relationships in the past before we were married. I can say for me, I've always been a person who's felt that God was going to call me to marriage. Now granted, my parents were not married, but I had different marriages around me that I was able to see that were healthy and unhealthy. So I was able to depict like, okay, maybe that ain't what I would want my marriage to look like. But then I was able to see others who were kind of older and mature as I grew up. It was like, okay, this is something that I know I would, want my marriage to kind of replicate, like honoring and following the Lord and putting Christ first in your marriage and raising your kids to a community of people and serving and giving and just all the different things I've seen. I was like, man, this is the right light of marriage. But I also, like I said, on the other side, understand like culture just continues to give us, hey, bad, terrible marriages and relationships.
What does that look, give us that how? What does it look like?
I mean, that's what's displayed a lot of times.
Displayed where?
Social media. So I think,
marriage? Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the thing is, a lot of times we got to understand that there's going to be problems and issues. That's going to happen. You're not going to be able to get with someone and y'all date and it gets to marriage and think like, hey, everything's going to be perfect.
Right.
It's not going to be that way, But it's figuring out, you know, hey, through your relationship with God, hey, is this other person that I'm choosing to be with equally yoked with me, and they're desiring the things that I desire, which is Christ first, and then now we're both able to be led by Christ to walk and do this life together. But I think, like I said, culture kind of gives us like, you know, hey, all these dudes trash, all these girls basic, and they're trash because they want to follow, you know, what the trend, and the dudes don't want to step up and be men, the dudes don't want to lead no woman, and just all these things. But I think, again, that's because what culture pushes forth for us to see so often and so much, that hey, if we're able to really, you know, get around other healthy people, you know, and pray and seek and ask God, like, hey, God, bring me godly community and godly marriages around me, you know, that I can see what that looks like, so I can start to prepare my heart, you know, for those type of things, if that's something that you desire. Now, I also understand that God even said in the Bible, or it might be Paul that says this, that hey, if you're called to be single, then to live single, you know, but that doesn't look like, hey, be out here doing you, sleeping with everybody out here.
People in the process.
Right, sleeping and trying to figure out like, oh yeah, this person for me. If you know you're called to, you know, be single and, you know, live for the Lord in singleness,
then that's what
do that. You know, like really honor God with your temple, with your body, and, you know, respect yourself and respect, you know, have love for God enough to walk in that light. But I mean, I gave a lot. I know that's just how I feel, and that's my stance. It's my opinion, you know. So I would love for y'all to come in and tell me what y'all think and what y'all feel. You know, this is what it's about. We want to communicate.
So how do you think that has affected? So being married now, well, even okay, let's go back to when we were dating. Even relationships you've had before, and including ours, like dating, engaged, now married, especially. Like, how do you think for you, those messages of like, those negative messages about marriage or about relationships in general has affected how you can speak on both of us, I mean, I guess for this part, how we, or even how you have had how it's affected you, pretty much.
So seeing the negative?
Because yeah, all the things you're talking about.
In dating or being married now?
Either.
So I think in the dating part of it, I think it did have a lot of influence on me. Because I started to see myself slowly drift towards like, hey, if I don't get married, then I'm gonna just be a bachelor, you know, and I'm gonna just be out here doing me.
You thought that?
Yeah, at points and seasons where I would like date and just be out here doing my thing. It's like, bruh, you know, cool, I ain't gonna marry nobody.
Because you thought it was so toxic that if you don't do it, it'd probably be fine because there's so much bad stuff anyway. Right. Maybe you're dodging a bullet type thing. Right,
I'm already out here in the scene and doing whatever, so hey, maybe I just turn my life around and just start to follow God and be just by myself. Yeah. But I think once I started to really do it in purpose and really started to date in purpose and be serious about my walk with God, he started to put that desire in my heart again.
Wanted to be with somebody.
Right, to show me like, hey, I do have a godly marriage for you. I do have someone who's for you, but I need you to turn away from the desires of your heart and turn to my desires. So once I was able to start doing that in my dating season, that's when God really was speaking to me, and I was able to really read in the Word and just spend the time with Him in prayer to see like, hey, He's changing my heart. And then even now, yeah, in marriage, I can say that I thank God because He blessed us with so many godly couples who are married, and even our friends who are single who desire to be married is healthy, and I can see the fruit in our relationships with these different people because it pours back into our marriage to be able to spend time with them, and you know, they pour into us, we pour into them, and it's like, man, there's so much fruit in doing life with these people who, you know, are either single and called to and okay with being single, or single and desire to be married, and even our married friends as well. So I mean, I thank God for the grace and the fruit from all of that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think too, one thing that came to mind too of how it affected, I guess, me. I'm not gonna say us because I don't know if this ever affected you, but I think seeing those negative images of like about men, or seeing like sometimes now in social media it can be a little tricky, like they'll twist it to where they won't show like a bad thing, to show a very, very good thing and make you compare and be like, I would also like a money bouquet. Yeah. I would also like a, yeah. So, but I think, and even, but let's just go for the negative stuff, right? The things that's not that good. I mean, I think we've seen that a lot of times. There's part of it where it's like, oh, it's relatable because we all have stuff. Whether you're dating, engaged, or married, I feel like, you know, you go through stuff. Everything's not peachy. So when you see someone else's problems, and if it's in like a lighthearted way, like a joking way, it make you feel like, okay, yeah, we go through that too. It's kind of funny. Right. You feel like kind of relatable, but also when it's a little too close to home, it make you be like, why are you like that? Like, why? Yeah. And so I've even gotten like upset. I've been fine, but then I'll see something on social or see something, and I'll be like, you know what? I don't like that, you know, and it just makes me all upset. And I really wasn't probably even thinking about it, you know, that much before. And not that these things shouldn't be discussed, but I think it can put a negative weight on what's wrong, even in your own relationships and your own marriage, because there's gonna be stuff that's wrong that needs work because we're not perfect, and this is not the perfect world yet. This is the earth. So, you know, this is still flesh. And so I think it's very, that can be a fine line of like even being mindful, even now as a wife, you know, okay, I'm not gonna watch or gorge myself on everyone else's dysfunction, problems that I see, like, you know, reality type stuff, or even stuff that's made up, even like certain shows and movies and stuff. If it's a little too scandalous, I'm probably not gonna watch it because there might be a seed of that maybe my marriage doesn't look exactly like that, but a part of that triggers something that we have been through or that we're still working on, and it makes me upset.
You've been through with somebody else.
Right, and now I'm mad at you and you have nothing to do with it. Right. But it makes me mad. It makes me mad again.
So I think that's so good because even, again, just back to the part of the culture, we have to really be able to guard ourselves and guard our hearts, like, you know, the Lord tells us in the Word, because from it flows, you know, so much. And if we're feeding it with, you know, the celebrity marriages and relationships and everybody else marriage relationship, and we're comparing it, and you know, and I think it's okay to, you know, have people that you see from afar like, oh man, that is amazing and dope. But again, I think it's so good and healthy to start, you know, having it around you, you know.
First, just people, your friends.
And praying, you know, for those godly marriages of community and godly single friends, you know, who desire marriage. It's like, hey, I want to walk with people who are trying to get to, you know, the places that I'm trying to get to or are already there, so that I can see what it looks like, you know, in a healthier light. Okay, so that's not one. I'm not gonna say it's his perspective. That's one side of it. Because I agree. Yeah. So the other side we were talking about that I was kind of more so wanting to focus or talk through is the flip side of that. So like the idolizing marriage, which I think especially in, I'll just say church culture for like a better, like Christian culture, there has been a lot of that. I feel like a lot of that lately in terms of like marriage, and maybe it's always been the way, I don't know, you know, I can just speak for my couple years of living so far, but yeah, like I idolizing marriage, and to the point where literally you want to put married people in the forefront of things, to lead ministries, to lead churches, to, you know, do these things, and then people who are not married are not given the same public honor as people, you know, who are. And so I think it's very, very interesting. I feel like I've seen it a lot. It's like I said, it's like Christian culture stuff, but I've seen it also just in regular mainstream culture as well, where if there's a cute couple that's out that we all love, we're, you know, watching their life and stalking their life and watching them, and every single time they make a move, what they got on, where they going, what they doing, they're so cute, you know. So I don't think it's just church culture, but I think we can really idolize marriage. And I kind of started to wonder like why. I think it kind of does come from, I think for most of us, a place of like, we have a yearning and a desire for togetherness, whether that's with friends, family, marriage, romantic relationships. And so it's not good for me to be alone. We all want somebody, you know. And so I think sometimes we could feed that desire with, you know, with the idea of marriage or with other people's marriages or things like that. But I think if we're not careful, you can still become married and still do it. And so I think what we see a lot of times in the Christian culture,
aspect, I'll speak toward that because that's why I see it. I feel like I see it heavy, but also I'm in it, so that's probably about it. But you know, it can be very hurtful for people who are not married, or add this unnecessary weight and pressure of marriage in a certain timeline, or marriage in a certain way, or by a certain point, and all this type of stuff. And then you're gonna add in all this stuff about, you know, having kids by a certain point, and all these different things that God doesn't desire for us to worry about at all. And then I think navigating it as married, so now we're obviously on the other side of that, so we are married. But I can even remember when, before we got married, like I was pressuring him out a lot, but I think a lot of that pressure was fear of like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do, and supposed to do really fast, and I don't want to be here and waste my time, because it was still an idol of marriage, you know.
That's good.
It's still an idol of that, because otherwise you could be content with whatever the day brings. Yeah. You won't worry about it. But I think part of that anxiety came from making marriage an idol, you know, and feeling like that was the goal to get to, because it's just really not. I mean, yes, thank God for marriage. It's a beautiful institution, and I'm so grateful for our marriage, and that God has blessed us with each other, and I love doing life with you. It's so fun. But you know, there's so much more on the other side of that as well. Like, there really is. And to idolize it and then get there and then realize, okay, this is not going to fulfill you the way maybe you once thought it was. Okay, you, Imani, now your husband's traveling for work, so what you gonna do? Now you still at the house by yourself, the way you was at the house by yourself before you got married, and you still gotta deal with those same things that come up in your alone time, you know. And so I think learning those things and going through that and navigating through that for me has been interesting, because I realized, okay, you bought into this idolatry somewhat, and so now we need to evict this idol after marriage, which is weird, but you do, and it frees you to be like, hey, now I can enjoy whatever God has blessed our marriage to look like. Now I can help encourage, you know, and get with other married couples, sure, but also realize that I can still have the friends that I have that aren't married, and know that these are people God put in my life, and not have to differentiate and separate, even though I feel like I never did that. But sometimes that's taught. Like, you have to, once you get married, you gotta like separate yourself from, which is not true. I mean, I don't believe that's true. Honestly, I don't see that in the Bible. I don't see that in other healthy relationships. Matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. We all need each other. Right. And we shouldn't all be in the same place, because then how would we be able to see each other's flaws, you know? So that's just my take. I think there's a lot of idolatry that happens especially in Christian culture, but in culture in general when it comes to marriages. Yeah,
I think it's I think that was good. I think it's speaking kind of to what you're talking about. It passes down a lot if you pay attention in generations. Like, just thinking back, even as we were growing up as kids, like how a lot of things are forced and pushed onto us, and it's really not explained.
Right.
You know, so it's like, oh yeah, you need to go to college. You need to go to college. But not knowledgeable of like, all right, you know, what does college entail? I'm trying to figure out like, what do I want to do on my life? And the same thing with marriage. Like, oh yeah, you know, you need to find the person you're supposed to be with, and that's a person you're supposed to marry and be with them for the rest of your life. And it's like, well, hey, let me figure out who I am within Christ, you know, and let me, you know, really walk with him and build a relationship before I even focus on, you know, or be worried about, hey, who am I supposed to be married to? Because God will bring those things.
Yeah.
He'll bring that to the forefront. He'll show you those things, but we've seen it over and over again, you know, and it happens. Like, think about it. If you go to the family reunion, you still single?
Yeah.
You ain't brought no boy, you ain't got no girl, like, just like, dang, culturally, why are we continuously trying to? Yeah,
because then when I go marry this little loser, now y'all be mad that we having marital problems and talking about it. So relax. Yeah. And we made it. But I think it's true. There's a lot of pressure for it. But I think it's just, you know, even the whole part of being ready and working on yourself with Christ, but you don't ever arrive. It's not like, oh, I finally have taken time to now find out who I am in Christ, and now I'm ready. We're not ready. It's not a readiness thing. Yeah, you continue to do that after you're married. I mean, it's just a different season of life that comes in. But I feel like as believers anyway, your walk with Christ is continuous. So you don't fit that in before marriage. You don't change it after marriage. It continues. It may change how it looks in the season, but that's continuous. That's our foundation. I mean, that doesn't go anywhere. Right. You know, so I think that even that mindset of like, oh, I need to do something and do this and do this and do this before I get married. I mean, I used to think that, and I understand why people can think that, but I just don't think depending on what the thing is that you feel like you need to do, I don't think that's always necessary.
Yeah, because it becomes idle.
Because it comes right. Because now you're just doing it to get married. Right. So what happens when I go to counseling and work on the womb?
Yeah, now you take the fruit out of, you know, what God created to be a beautiful thing.
Right.
Because now you're putting so much pressure on it and allowing other people to put pressure on it. You know, don't really understand the power of what marriage is.
Right.
You don't understand what one is really looks like. And
it's really
like she was saying, you know, for us, that was something, like she said, she had to realize, like, hey, we were dating and the pressure of like, oh man, I need to be married starts to creep in. But it's like, well, hey, you know, we have to be submitted to God, you know, and that's more important than anything. Culture can give us this and all these different things. Church can give us this and people in the church can give us this. It's like, oh yeah, but it's like, well, hey, you know, what is God telling you? You know, like walk with God and figure out what He is desiring for you, and He'll lead you exactly to what it is.
And how much more joy and freedom and peace will we have when we don't either run from something, like if, you know, if we're trying to avoid marriage or not be married, or if we're trying to run to it either, like if we just be. You know, and enjoy the life that God has blessed us with wherever we are today in that moment. And yes, we have our desires, but if we really trust Him with it so that we can enjoy where we are, you know, be honest about how we're feeling and be honest about those things and walk through it with our community and our friends and stuff. Yeah. But how much more freedom would we have if we didn't have the pressure of having to do one or the other in a certain time or in a certain way or for anyone else, you know? Like God is not mad because we're not married. God is not mad because we are. He's happy that He's pleased with us because He made us and He loves us. So that's just that. But just some thoughts.
Yeah, so we just wanted to get on here and, you know, just share and talk about a couple things that God just placed on our heart when it comes to relationships and marriage and the culture and how we idolize things and put pressure on ourselves. Just all the different things, you know, that just comes to us sometimes as we're hanging out and spending time together. Yeah,
so listen, drop in the comments if you have some thoughts about this or even questions and things we can continue to dialogue. You know, we'd love to do that. But just wanted to share some of these thoughts. As you see, we're very passionate. Yeah. These are things that we, you know, because the heart is that none of us really feels pressured by culture to do anything because God don't give us a heavy burden like that. Right. So we shouldn't have it. But anyways, we love you guys so much. If you haven't yet, of course, like and subscribe to join the family, or just keep watching. I mean, I love subscribers, but if you just pop it in to say hey as well. Yeah. So we love you guys. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye.
Peace.